Oftentimes as humans, we get so caught up in our heads, in our minds. There's this constant chatter that replays over and over. And my guess is, as caregivers and professionals, this happens for you a lot. We either spend a lot of time in our past looking back at what happened, how we could have handled that situation differently, what words we should have said, how we should have anticipated this, what we'll do differently next time. We're always looking back, or we spend a lot of time looking forward at the future, saying, how can we protect our kids going forward? We're trying to constantly live 10 steps ahead of them. What do I need to do to prepare for the next doctor's appointment? Oh, I need to remember to have that conversation with the school counselor. Oh, I need to do this. I need to do that. I've got to protect them in this way. And so you're either living in your past or you're living in your future. And very rarely, in small instances, are you right here in this present moment. And that's where mindfulness and peace and ease happen, is right here in this moment, because that's all we're promised. So that exercise we just did, the 5 senses, you can do that at any moment of your day when you're feeling overwhelmed or stressed, just to get out of your head and to quiet that constant chatter and come back to the present moment. So in her book, The Way of Integrity, Harvard-trained sociologist, life coach, and my personal mentor, Martha Beck, says this: physical pain comes from events, but psychological suffering comes from the way we deal with those events. So let's talk about that for a minute. Psychological suffering. It's the frustration, the guilt, the overwhelm, the irritation that happens from the way we respond to and handle those events that occur. We like to talk about it in coaching like this. You have a set of circumstances, and those circumstances create thoughts. And all of those thoughts, that chatter that's happening inside your head, that elicits emotions. And those emotions that come up, like irritation or frustration or guilt, that's what drives your behavior. So think of it like this. I'm wearing a blue jacket today. So you're sitting here watching me and you see a blue jacket. That's the circumstance. I've got blue, yellow, and I'm speaking to you. That's it. You begin to think, I like blue. Blue's a really good color. My mom looked good in blue. My mom was really nice. Oh, I miss her. I wish she were still with me today. So those are the random, sometimes unrelated thoughts that begin to happen, and those create emotions. So you begin to think, I love my mom. I miss her. Maybe some sadness or some happiness or some love comes into play. And then that drives your behavior. You're tuning in, intently listening to me because I remind you of your mom, right? I know I do. And so that's why you're paying attention to me. What often happens, though, is that we're so busy and we're running on autopilot that we don't even recognize the thoughts that we're having and how they affect our behavior. In fact, the National Science Foundation did a study, and they say that the average person has up to 60,000 thoughts a day. 60,000. Do you believe that? I mean, whenever I think of all the decisions I have to make throughout a day, it makes sense. Of those 60,000 thoughts, 80% of them are negative and 95% play on repeat. I'm going to say that again. 80% of them are negative and 95% of them play on repeat. So when you're operating on autopilot, you're not recognizing the thoughts that are ultimately creating emotions and driving your behavior. It was like I was cleaning my house the other day, and I started in the kitchen. I was just putting the dishes in the dishwasher, and I thought, oh, I need to remember to take out the trash. So then I go to take out the trash, and I realized it's half empty, and I thought, oh, I should clean out the closet before I take out the trash so that it's full. So then I go to my closet and I'm pulling everything out of my closet and I'm putting some stuff in the trash, and I come upon receipts. I was like, oh, well, those need to go into my QuickBooks so that I can do my taxes. So I move them over to my desk, and next thing I know, I'm sitting at my laptop doing taxes when I was supposed to be doing my dishes. And I end up having a bajillion thoughts and all the things that I need to be doing, and none of them I was fully present for. I have a half sink full of dishes, full trash that needs to be taken out. Everything's out of my closet, and my taxes still aren't done. So you are constantly jumping ahead to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, that you're not being really present and living in the actual moment. And that's where mindfulness comes into play. Your suffering starts in the mind. And we may not think of overwhelm as suffering, but when you think about depression and anxiety and just the heaviness that life can often bring sometimes, those are the emotions that are driving our behavior, and we're operating from that space. So if you want to change the outcome, you want to change the behavior, you have to go back to those thoughts, the suffering that's starting in your mind. And that's really where mindfulness comes into play. Who here knows the definition of mindfulness? What would you say it is? Drop a message in the chat. I'd love to know what everyone thinks of mindfulness. Let's see what you guys have to say. Putting yourself first. Yes, Katie, that's a really great one. Attention to now. Yep. Relaxation. Yes. Yes. All good examples. Let's see what the very scientific Google says. Mindfulness is the quality or state of being conscious or aware of something. It also says that it's a state achieved by focusing one's awareness on the present moment while acknowledging how you feel, what you're thinking, bodily sensations, things like that. I love to define mindfulness using this graphic. Your mind is either full, humming, buzzing with energy and activity, like when I was cleaning my house, where I'm always jumping from one thing to the next, or your mind full about your choices, where it's just this thin, wavy line. So let's think about the mindful on the left, where your mind is busy humming, humming, humming. You're never fully present. You're not necessarily acknowledging how you feel. You're not necessarily even noticing all the thoughts that are swirling in your head. But when you have that thin, wavy line, you're much more present. It doesn't mean that blips aren't going to occur, right? It doesn't mean that life won't happen or obstacles won't come into place. It does mean that when they happen, we know how to navigate them with ease so that we don't have extreme highs and extreme lows. We're just really acknowledging what's going on and making very intentional choices about what we want for our life. I like to think of it like this. Say you're playing games with your kids and you're laughing and having a really good time and everyone's engaging, and for once everybody's getting along, and suddenly your phone rings in the other room. Now, at the moment it rings, you might think, oh, I need to go answer this. And some anxiousness might come up. Oh, that could be my husband. That could be the doctor. That could be my mother. That could be anybody, right? And you think, oh, I need to go answer this. And you sit there and you think, I was playing and having a really good time. I can make the choice to go do that and get distracted, or I can stay in this moment with my kids and know that that can wait. Another great example I love to use is, say you're sitting on the front porch with your grandmother. It's something I used to love to do whenever I was a kid. We would sit in her rockers and I would hold her hand and we would just watch the sunset. She had a big, beautiful wheat field in her backyard, and we would just watch the sunset in Okarchi. And when we would sit there, we would drink iced tea. I would look over at her and I would just remember how sweet and kind my grandmother was. And then, yes, I would start thinking, I was a teenager at the time. I'm like, all right, now I need to get home and all my friends are doing this and I really wanted to go out tonight and I want to do all the things. What's for dinner? All these things. But then I'd look up at my grandmother and I'd remember, I don't have a lot of time left with her. She's getting older, dementia setting in, and I could make the choice to continue to be stuck up here in my mind of all the places that I want to be besides with my grandmother, or I could choose to be right there with her, even if it's for 5 minutes longer, taking in the precious moments that I have and spending time with her. So it doesn't mean that you're not going to get distracted or that thoughts aren't going to come up or that storylines aren't going to come into play. It's really learning to navigate those storylines and the story that you're telling yourself with a little more ease and grace and making choices from that place. So I'm going to introduce you to 3 simple tools that will help you to navigate those nuances of your daily life. Hopefully, they will help you to quiet the chatter going on in your mind, maybe become more aware of your thoughts or the storyline around a situation that you're telling yourself. And then maybe even shift your perspective about an event or an incident or an outcome. So they're really simple. Research has shown that these tools, when practiced regularly, can have a significant impact on your emotional and mental well-being. So the key there is that when they're practiced regularly, and that means that you have to do it, not me. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. So let's start with the first tool, your breath. Breathing is so easy and it's free and it's available to anyone at any single time, right? I often say it's the easiest tool in your toolkit. It's often overlooked. But without getting super nerdy about it, I want to tell you a little bit about what happens when we hold our breath. How many of y'all, give me a show of like a hands or thumbs up. How many of y'all tend to hold your breath when you get overwhelmed or anxious or not know how to respond to something? Am I the only one? Oh, good. I'm not the only one. I see some hands up over here. Okay, cool. Well, what happens is that when you get anxious or nervous, your body moves into fight, flight, or freeze mode. It's as if you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, right? Your body goes into survival mode, and sometimes we like to hold our breath. And what that does when you hold your breath is it floods your central nervous system with adrenaline and also with cortisol, which is your stress hormone, right? You have increased heart rate, you act like you're running away from something, and you're in survival mode. But the benefit of taking some deep breaths and doing some of the breath work that I'm going to show you today is that deep breaths can actually slow your heart rate. It will increase the oxygen that's in your bloodstream, and it will communicate with your brain to relax, right? The threat has disappeared, and it increases as it decreases the adrenaline and stops the flow of adrenaline. It will increase your endorphins, which is the feel-good chemical, and that's what we want. So breathing has a lot of benefits to it, but we have to remember to exhale and take another inhale. So what I didn't mention earlier, I told you that yoga is my jam, but I also am a yoga instructor, and I use this with all of my students throughout my classes, is deep breathing and 3 easy breathing techniques. So I want to walk you through them today, and I want you guys to experience with me the power of your breath. The first one is this. It's as simple as 3 deep breaths. And I want you to inhale for a count of 4, and you're going to exhale for a count of 6, because there's always more that you can release, that you can surrender, not only from the breath perspective, but from letting go of the tension in your body, letting go of the thoughts that you're carrying with you, letting go of that storyline that you want to add to and chase down. So wherever you are, we're just going to take 3 deep breaths together, and I'm going to walk you through it. So I want you to sit up nice and tall. In your chair, stack your head right over your shoulders. And as you take a deep breath in, I want you to elongate your spine, sitting up nice and tall. And then as you exhale, I want you to let your shoulders just relax and feel the tension begin to drain from your body. Good. We're going to inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Slow exhale for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, deep breath in. 4, 3. Feel all the way to the top. 2, 1. Deep breath out. 6, 5, 4, 3. Keep breathing out. 2, 1. Again, big breath in. 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale. Let everything go. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. How do you guys feel? Were you able to feel a change in your attitude, your tension, your breathing, your heart rate? Was it obvious to you? Give me a thumbs up if it was. Yes, I see some thumbs up. Awesome. Okay, so that was a really simple one, right? 3 deep breaths. You can do that at any point. Now let's go on to the next one. This is box breathing, and I love it. You essentially make a box. You inhale for 4, hold your breath for 4, exhale for 4, and hold your breath for 4. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. I use this a lot with my nephew, and what's interesting is he came to me one time and he was like, Aunt Mandi, his counselor told him about this exact same breathing technique. And I love when, even as a 10-year-old, he gets it, like the light bulb goes off and he puts these things into practice and he knows how they benefit him. So this is one he often uses whenever he finds himself getting frustrated with his brothers or his parents. He goes to this and he'll do several rounds, and then he'll come back and respond from a much calmer place. So I want you to practice this. Again, wherever you are, just sit up nice and tall. Inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold. 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold at the bottom. 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, inhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's do one more round. Deep breath in, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. Take a deep breath in. And then just exhale, let everything go. So that's another one where you really begin to learn to restrict your breath. And what's interesting is what happens to the mind when you hold. Oftentimes we go into our heads. I noticed Jen said that on the chat. She said in the first technique, it was hard to do with people talking. Your mind kept wandering to what they were talking about. But what's interesting about both breathing techniques is that's a good thing, is that you're noticing your mind wandering. And that's what mindfulness is. It's just becoming aware of the fact that your mind has wandered off and isn't present. So with the box breathing, when you get into the hold section, I remember when I first started doing this technique, I would think, oh my God, I gotta breathe. Like I can't breathe. Oh my God, I'm gonna suffocate. What's gonna happen to me? And my mind just went into this negative spiral so quickly. And what's really important is that you create awareness around those thoughts. And the more you practice this, the more your mind begins to settle, and the longer periods of time that it stays at ease, right? Yes, it's fine if you want to think, hurry up. I have people in yoga class tell me that all the time. They're like, come on, let's move on. I'm like, nope, I'm challenging you in a really mental way right now. So, all right, the last breathing technique I want to show you is one of my absolute favorites, and it's counting your breaths. So we're going to do this for a couple different rounds. It's just going to take a couple minutes, but the point is you're going to inhale and you're going to count your exhale. So inhale, exhale 1, inhale, exhale 2, and you're going to count all the way up to 10. And when you get to 10, you're going to start back over at 1. And you just take a couple rounds like that, right? So this is very much like a little bit of a guided meditation. A lot of beginning meditation experts will use this, using the breath as an anchor to keep coming back. And the reason it's my favorite is going back to noticing the mind wandering. Your mind is probably going to wander as we do this exercise together, and that's okay. When it wanders, try not to be hard or judgmental on yourself. Try not to beat yourself up like, ugh, I'm not doing it right. That's the whole point of this exercise, is that you begin to recognize when you're in your mind versus when you're in the present moment. And the breath and counting your exhales keeps you very present right now. So we're going to try this together just for a couple rounds. Again, I want you to sit up nice and tall. Get comfortable in your seat. Stack your head over your shoulders, over your hips. And as you inhale, I want you to elongate your spine, being alert and present. And as you exhale, I want you to just let something soften, let some of the tension go. Take a deep breath in. Exhale 1. Breath in. Exhale 2. Inhale. Exhale 3. Inhale. Exhale 4. Breathe in. Breathe out 5. Breath in. Breath out 6. Deep breath in. Deep breath out 7. Inhale. Exhale 8. Breath in. Breath out 9. Good. One more inhale. Exhale 10. Now let's do it one more round. Inhale. Exhale 1. Continue on your own at your own pace, all the way up to 10. If your mind begins to wander, just note it and simply come back to the breath. Good. Wherever you are, go ahead and take one more big breath in. Deep breath out. If your eyes are closed, feel free to open them in your own time. What I like to say is that when you are facing a particularly tough moment, maybe it's a courageous conversation that you need to have, or maybe you've been confronted about something and you need to respond, or you've received an email, and it can be from family or authority figures or your kids or the school. It could be really from anyone. I want you to give yourself permission to use one of these breathing techniques before you respond. Take 3 deep breaths. If you need to, take some box breathing, right? Count your breaths. Allow your heart rate to come down, because when we're confronted with things or we feel inadequate or not enough, like we don't have the answers and we should have the answers, the anxiety begins to set in and the overwhelm sets in and our heart rate increases and we go back into that fight, flight, or freeze mode. But I want you to use these tools in those particular moments. Give yourself permission to step away and either call them back or come back and visit or respond at a later date or sit on that email before you hit send, so that you can allow your anxiety to calm, that adrenaline to stop flowing, allow the endorphins to come back into play, the feel-good chemical, and you can respond from a much healthier place. Sound good? Does anyone have any questions about breath work or how it works or some of the techniques we talked about? I don't see any. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. If you happen to drop it in the chat, I'm watching, and we can certainly come back to it. So now we're going to approach our cruising altitude for the mindfulness journey that we're on today. And we're going to talk about the second tool, one of my favorites, and that's visualization. So remember when I said earlier that 80% of your thoughts are negative in any given day and that they kind of play on repeat over and over again? How many of you all get a phone call and you see a certain phone number come up and you're like, the anxiousness sets in, right? Or the principal calls and you're like, oh, not again. Or you get a call from the doctor and you're worried about what the answer is going to be, right? Simple little day-to-day tasks or nuances can cause significant emotional responses within us. So what is interesting is that we tend to focus on the worst case scenario. Doing that, focusing on the worst case scenario, is often called catastrophizing. And we do that because we've been caught off guard before, and it's a way to protect our future selves from being caught off guard again, from not knowing the answers, from feeling blindsided, from feeling confronted. And this happens quite frequently, even with some of the simplest things that we face day in and day out. We tend to go to the worst case scenario. What's cool is that visualization is such a powerful tool to help us think of the best case scenario, to help shift our energy and our perspective around any given situation and show up differently in that scenario. So researchers at the Cleveland Clinic Foundation in Ohio did a visualization experiment to test the strength benefits of imagining working a muscle group. The test subjects were split into 3 different groups of healthy young adults. And the first group, they spent 15 minutes a day, 5 days a week for 3 months, 12 weeks, just imagining flexing their little finger muscle, right? So just flexing that pinky. The second group did the exact same thing. They said 15 minutes a day, 5 days a week for 12 weeks, but they imagined flexing their bicep. And then the third group was a control group, and they didn't envision anything, right? So researchers measured muscle strength all throughout those 12 weeks. And what they found was super incredible. The first group, those who just envisioned working their little finger muscle, their muscle strength increased 53%. Can you imagine how many target sacks you could put on that little finger muscle if it increases? 53%. And the second group, the ones who envisioned flexing their bicep, their strength increased 13.4%. So what's incredible is that the brain doesn't differentiate very much between what you're envisioning, the visualization going on, and what's actually happening in reality. The best case example I have of this is last night I was actually sitting here on my couch watching Law and Order SVU. It's a show that I don't know how many of you all watch it, but they follow sexual violence instances, right? And as I was sitting there watching it, I found my heart rate increasing and I found my palms getting sweaty. And I was very, very nervous as I'm watching them follow this criminal and try to investigate the case and figure out what's happening. And at one point, a commercial break comes on and it's like, suddenly my eyes open and I was like, oh yeah, I'm not on the streets of New York being chased by a criminal. I'm in my couch, in my home, on a couch with a roof over my head and air conditioner blowing, like I'm safe. But so often we can get consumed with the story that we're visualizing that it's really hard to differentiate between the story and reality. And that's what this tool can be helpful for if it's used in a really good way. So the way I encourage you to implement this technique is to think about a situation or a scenario that you're facing that might cause you a little bit of anxiety. It might be asking someone for help or advocating for your child, or maybe even a dinner out with your family or your spouse or a vacation that you want to take. A lot of times those can create an anxiousness in us that we don't even anticipate or we don't even realize. But it goes back to thinking about that catastrophe that happened before, and we're doing it as a way to protect ourselves. So you think of the scenario, and then you simply spend 5 to 10, maybe even 15 minutes if you have it, minutes a day, envisioning the best possible outcome. So instead of focusing all of your energy on what could happen and going to that doom and gloom worst case scenario, we're going to shift our energy and we're going to talk about what could happen, what other possibilities are out there. And we're going to train our brain using this technique to notice that there's multiple different pathways we can take, right? We tend to go to that worst case scenario every time, like a dog walking a fence line. We're just going to keep taking that exact same path and assuming that exact same outcome is going to happen. And we're really just training our brain, much like those participants in the study did to show that there's different ways to flex a muscle. There's different ways to build strength. There's different outcomes that can happen when you have to have a courageous conversation or when you go on a family dinner. So I want you to think of a specific scenario that might be causing you a little bit of anxiety, something that's coming up, and we're going to practice this technique together. It might be a conversation you need to have. It might be an email you need to send. It might be a dinner out where you're like, gosh, every time I go to dinner, it's such a chore. I get all these stares from people because my child acts out. It's fine. We're going to work on that for a moment. All right. So when you have your scenario in mind, again, we're going to practice this together just for about a couple minutes. I'll give you a taste of what it's actually like. So I want you to close your eyes and take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Good. Begin to envision the best possible outcome for the scenario that you're considering. What does that situation going well look like for you? Maybe everything's running smoothly, conversations are positive or light. People are smiling and cooperative. Envision that scenario feeling easy. And then I want you to pay attention to how you're showing up in your vision. What energy are you bringing to the conversation or scenario? You're confident, kind, patient, speaking up, using your voice. And I want you to continue playing that scenario in your head, and I want you to envision how that could be better than what you're currently imagining. What would make that scenario better? And then now try to envision something even better. And I want you to feel the ease of that scenario. And I want you to notice where in your body you feel that ease. Maybe take a scan of your body from the crown of your head to the tips of your toes. And just notice any areas of lightness or openness or relaxation. begin to create that muscle memory for ease and comfort in your body. Just sit here experiencing it for a couple more breaths. Go ahead, take a deep breath in. And as you exhale, gently open your eyes. Simple, easy, although sometimes visualizations come easier for some than others, but the more you practice that technique, I promise the easier it gets. The important thing here is not what you envisioned, and it's not about visualizing how others are behaving. It's about what you bring to that conversation. It's about how you show up in that scenario. Because mindfulness is about you. It's about putting yourself first. How are you going to respond? How are you going to behave? How are you going to let those emotions drive your behavior? You can't help what others are going to do, but if you've spent time envisioning the best possible scenario, then you're already in the headspace of things are going to be easy. And so you show up with your walls down, your defenses down. You're not ready for a fight. Instead, you're expecting things to be easy. So if something comes up and it feels like a challenge, you can recognize that in your body. You can recognize the tension coming up and like, oh, this doesn't feel easy like I anticipated. And you can make decisions from that space. You can say, okay, what do I need to know or do in order to move me back into a place of ease? And again, that's what mindfulness is about. It's just becoming really present, becoming really aware of the thoughts that are coming up. And when you notice yourself in a scenario where you're not feeling that ease in your body, then you get to make a decision from that on how are you going to behave? How are you going to change things? What do you need to do differently in that moment to get back to ease? So I encourage you with this exercise. I love to do it. If you have a specific situation in mind that's coming up, spend moments, 5 to 10 minutes a day, in the weeks, days, and even moments leading up to that situation or scenario, envisioning the best possible outcome so that you show up in the best possible way. Athletes, speakers, professionals have been using this for years and I've seen a ton of success with it. So it's a really fun one that I encourage you to use. All right, so now as we approach our final descent in your journey today and we begin to wrap this up, we're going to go into our final tool, which is gratitude. If comparison is the thief of joy, I like to say that gratitude is the killer of comparison. So we're going to talk about how gratitude is often an overlooked tool that is in people's toolkits. And research shows it is the single most important tool in increasing your overall happiness. Gratitude, right? Something so simple, but often overlooked. In today's world of social media, it is really easy to get caught up in that comparison game. You can scroll, and you see people on vacation or dinners out, or I just got a promotion at work, or look at her and her spouse, they look so happy. And as caregivers, we can often think, they have so much and I don't have that. I can't go on vacation in Florida because the wheelchair doesn't go on the sand. Or, gosh, I wish I could go out to dinner with my kid without people giving me menacing stares because he throws food. Or you might be thinking, I wish I had that relationship with my spouse, but at the end of the day, I have nothing left to give. Remember, you're just seeing their highlight reel. And while some feelings of envy, a small amount of envy can be really good to use as a motivation to go after your dreams or to live the life that you desire, too much envy and too often leads to feelings of insecurity, inferiority, doubt, sometimes shame, and a lot of overwhelm. So we're going to talk about the research behind gratitude and why it's such an effective tool for increasing your happiness first. So one study on happiness showed that research participants were more likely to experience less envy on days when they expressed more gratitude. Let me say that again, less envy on days where they expressed more gratitude. It's also been linked to activating your parasympathetic nervous system. So that's what I talked about in the very beginning. Your parasympathetic nervous system is when your heart rate decreases, everything slows, and all of your systems and processes that are natural bodily functions come back online. So it's whenever you move out of fight, flight, or freeze mode into rest and digest mode. Your cardiovascular system, your digestive system, your circulatory system, all of those come back online, and you're operating from a place of health and ease. So, and then my personal favorite is this. Gratitude is the single most important factor used in raising the Lasada ratio. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. There was a ton of studies done around the effect of gratitude on relationships. And these studies show that your relationship with others and with yourself can start to suffer if one of you becomes a little bit less appreciative or naggier in the relationship, right? So have you ever had something that didn't used to bother you suddenly start to bother you and grate on you a little bit? I remember my ex-husband and I were together for 12 years, and M&Ms are my favorite. They've been my favorite candy since childhood, and I would always eat M&Ms. And in the final years of our marriage, he used to get so irritated whenever I would chew M&Ms. And I was like, look, we've been together 12 years. I eat probably thousands of M&Ms in a year, right? So why does it suddenly bother you the way I chew an M&M? But here's what happens. In a nutshell, the Lasada ratio is the sum of positivity in a system or relationship divided by the negativity in that system or relationship. And more than 700 studies have been done, and they show that that ratio is really predictive of the success of the relationship. So when there's more positivity and less negativity, then there's going to be a higher likelihood of a successful relationship. And these studies were done in familial settings with partners and spouses, also in family or in office settings, and friend groups, and even studies done on your relationship with yourself and that mental chatter. So research shows that gratitude is how you raise that ratio. So now that I've talked to you about a little bit of the research behind gratitude, I want to talk to you about some ways that you can implement it. Yes, you can certainly walk around all day saying, I'm so grateful. This is amazing. Thank you for that. Oh, I appreciate you. Yes, that's expressing gratitude, but there are also really intentional, mindful ways that you can do it as well. So gratitude in action looks like this. A daily gratitude journal. I saw somebody mention that they keep a gratitude journal. I love that. I'm a huge proponent of gratitude journals. You can get a fancy one that is branded as a gratitude journal, or you can get a spiral bound notebook. It doesn't matter. The point is that you write in it. I recommend you write at least 5 things a day that you're grateful for. And imagine this. Imagine starting your day before you even open your eyes with gratitude. Like you're in that waking moment where your body's just starting to come alive each morning, and you take your first breath in and you're like, I'm alive. I'm grateful for that. I get another day. I'm grateful for this breath that I just took in. I can sense the sun shining coming through the window. I'm grateful it's going to be sunny. I'm grateful for the clients I get to see. I'm grateful for the noise I hear down the hall, meaning my husband and my kids are up. I'm grateful for this day and all that it's going to bring. Imagine that versus immediately grabbing your phone and scrolling and going into comparison mode. 2 very different mornings, right? You can also do gratitude at night. I like to do both in the morning and at night. You can finish your day by saying, what happened today that was amazing that I was grateful for? I saw a cardinal, or I got a green light, or I got an amazing parking spot. It doesn't have to be anything really profound. Finding gratitude in the really little things is where it becomes a powerful tool. So you can do it in the morning, at night, in a fancy journal, in a simple journal. You can also carry your journal with you throughout the day, but just take a moment to reflect on 5 things you're grateful for. So to raise the Lasada ratio, I told you you have to have more positive than the negative, right? So here's how this one works. And it's a really interesting tool, and it's kind of tough if you ask me. But once you put it into practice, it's super powerful. Think of a situation or a scenario where you're really kind of frustrated or irritated about it. And the example I'm going to give you is, let's say you have a conversation with a doctor, and you leave the doctor's office and you're like, he didn't even understand me. Nobody understands me. I feel so blindsided by what he said. He doesn't get my kid. we need to get a second opinion. Like, you're just so frustrated by the way that conversation went. You're thinking, I should have spoken up. I should have done this, right? You're irritated. And that means that irritation, those thoughts are creating feelings of irritation and frustration and maybe even anger or bitterness. And that's going to drive your behavior, either leading you to avoid that doctor, find a new doctor, get anxious every time you go to that doctor, whatever it might be. So to raise your Lasada ratio, what you do is you first list out one of the negative thoughts. So let's say nobody understands me. And I see what time it is, and I promise we're going to wrap up soon, and we'll still have time for Q&A before the next section. So you're going to take one of those negative thoughts, like nobody understands me. And for that one negative thought, you're going to find 3 to 4 reasons you're grateful for that very situation that caused the negative thought. And that's where it's hard for people. If you're thinking, nobody understands me, or I'm not understood by this doctor, instead, you might say, I'm grateful for the opportunity to choose my words with care. I'm grateful for being misunderstood so that I can learn how to be a better advocate for myself and my child. I'm grateful for the ability to practice patience when I felt like I had none, right? So you're not thinking about gratitude in this general sense of things you're grateful for in your life. You're thinking about that specific scenario that caused all the frustration and irritation. What are you grateful for about it? And then you would take every single one of the negative thoughts you had. So then nobody understands me. I'm going to have to get a second opinion. He doesn't care about my kid. All those things, you're going to find 3 to 4 reasons to be grateful for every single one of them, because you're trying to increase the positivity while you decrease the negativity in that relationship. And then the next one is a gratitude burst. This is one of my favorites. It's super fun. I love to do this on a monthly or a quarterly basis, but essentially you draw a big sunshine like you see on the left of the screen here. In the center, I love to put the date so that I always know when to come back. And then the rays of the sun create sections. And in those sections, you label them, give them a theme. So it may be family. It may be each of your kids' names, right? It could be your spouse's name. It could be your work. Or it could be your faith, or it could be your finances or your home, but you would label the sections of the burst. And then in each burst, you're just going to freeform write whatever you're grateful for about that. So if home is one of them, on that given day, you may be, I'm grateful that we got electricity back. I'm grateful for my high-speed internet. I'm grateful to have a roof over my head and a working air conditioner whenever it's 100 degrees outside. Right? In that moment, you're going to find all the things you're grateful for. And this really goes back to the comparison theory and having envy versus recognizing all of your abundance. When you label those sections around the sun, you suddenly realize how abundant your life is and how much good there is and how much is working well for you versus one specific scenario where you're feeling not enough or you're feeling like you have a lot of lack in your life. Recognizing that your life is really full of abundance. So that's a fun one. And then the last one, this one is often challenging for people, is to find 10 reasons that you're grateful for you. And it's also a good one to practice on a fairly regularly basis, whether that's weekly or monthly. As a caregiver, especially when you're facing overwhelm or burnout, it's often overwhelming, and you may get the sense that I'm not doing enough. I can't keep up. I'm failing them. I'm failing me. I'm failing my family. And again, your mind goes to all the things you lack, all the characteristics you lack, all the things you're doing wrong, instead of focusing on all the value you bring to your family and to your children. And what's important is that you recognize that you do bring value, that the scenario or situation wouldn't be the same if it weren't for you. So I want you to focus on 10 things you're grateful for about you. And it might look like this. I have eyes to see my children just as they are. I can hear, so I can tell when my child is upset or angry. I have hands to offer a loving touch and a hug to my children, and I can feel them hug me back. I have a voice to advocate for them, even if I don't do it right? The fact that you can use your voice and recognize when you need to stand up for them. So that's the one I'm going to leave you with today. And in the essence of time, we're not going to do it together, although I was going to challenge you to. So I'm going to challenge you to find 10 reasons that you're grateful for you. And I want you to look inwardly, not outwardly. So this doesn't mean I'm grateful for my husband or I'm grateful that I have 5 kids. No, this is I'm grateful for the patience I get to practice with my kids. I'm grateful for my hands or my eyes, or my ears, or whatever it might be, right? The love that I have to give. So I want you to think inwardly, not outwardly. And then as we approach our final destination on our journey together today, I want to remind you, mindful or mindful is your choice. You get to decide. We can stay in this state of chaos and overwhelm and frustration where our mind is buzzing with that hum of activity for days, hours. It's your choice. And sometimes we'll sit in that scenario festering and frustrated, being anxious about what is to come. And if we would just take, and that may take days, right? Or if we could take 5 minutes, moments, 3 deep breaths, we can find peace in our day-to-day life to be able to navigate that future with a little more ease. So using these tools, tapping into your breath, using the visualization so that you know how you want to show up and the energy you want to bring to a specific scenario, recognizing what ease feels like in your body, and then practicing gratitude on a day-to-day basis. All of these are really simple, easy tools that cost you nothing, and you can use them to help find a more mindful way of life, a more intentional way of living, if you will. So I want to leave you with this quote. In a world full of doing, it's important to take a moment to just breathe, to just be. When I was leaving the airport in Switzerland last week, or just 2 days ago, there was a gentleman who had a backpack on, and his backpack said, "Less human, more being." And I just love that, because oftentimes we're so caught up in our head. We're so caught up in the comparison game. We're so caught up in the storylines we want to tell ourselves, and we're adding to it, and we're making up those worst case scenarios, right? That we're just kind of a human going through the motions, and we're not being, we're not present, we're not relaxed, we're not at peace. And peace is ultimately what I want for you. But here's the thing, I can't take that journey for you. I can give you the tools, I can show you the way, but it's up to you to take the first step. So I encourage you to give yourself permission to try one thing. See how it feels. Wake up the next day, try it again. Try something new. Use them all at once. It's totally your choice. Thank you guys so much for letting me present these tools to you today. I hope that you found them beneficial, and I would love to answer any questions you may have.